Welcome back to episode 6 of the War Within Season 1 Zero to Hero Marksmanship Hunter Challenge. This is the final episode in the series. We have 2 keys to go over here. I'm very close to 2500. And then I'm going to actually go over like what I thought about Marksmanship Hunter and maybe what are my plans for next season Zero to Hero. Yeah, let's get right into it. I crunched some numbers and I realized I need to +2 an 8 Grim Batol and it'll basically put me at exactly 2500. So this was looking like to be my last key up to this point. The tank double pulls this pack, which usually isn't a big deal if you get stuns and some interrupts and knockups going off. I let the chain mine go off, but then I send an interrupt to cancel it. And then here I try and get the second chain to mine, but I misclick with my interrupt. And then I get a Shadow Flame Bolt into an Earth Bolt and get deleted. So full group wipe on this one. Kind of unfortunate. At this point, I still think we have time to +2 it. So everyone stays in and we keep going. So we kill the Lava Bender on the bridge. We pull these 2 Warlocks. And then the tank actually ends up pulling an extra Dragon, which is definitely a strategy if you want to skip the double Lava Bender before the next boss. So he pulls the dragon onto the bridge, and you'll see here, I'm standing behind the dragon, and the dragon kind of flaps its wings, moves its tail, and then I get knocked off. And I've never seen this before. I looked up the dragon on like Wowhead and in all its abilities. I can't find anywhere where the tail actually knocked you. I don't know if anyone can confirm that. Anyways, I get knocked off, and then I think the other hunter also dies. So now we're up to 8 deaths. We have 10 minutes to 2 chest this, and it is, it's not looking too hot. We make it to the last boss with 1:20 left with no lust. I'm not feeling too confident. We get him down to only like 30% by the time the 2 chests expires. And we finish the key, lo and behold, at 2,499, which is a slap in the face. Basically means I gotta run one more key, and I gotta time it. So let's get into the next one. So I was looking at what keys I had already done and what would be the easiest one to pick up, and it actually ended up being a +9 Necrotic Wake. 10 sometimes can be easier than a 9 depending on your group, but I decided to shoot for the 9, and we end up timing this. This key actually goes pretty smoothly, so I'm just going to talk about kind of my thoughts about Marksmanship Hunter and maybe this season, and then what maybe I want to do next season. So coming into this, I hadn't really played Hunter in any capacity, and I ended up landing on Marksmanship Hunter just based off like tier list and meta list and damage and all that stuff. Marksman seemed to be at the bottom for most of those things, and I kind of like to do these series with a quote-unquote F tier spec, kind of just to show that you can get KSH Keystone Hero on any class or spec. The first thing I noticed when I started playing is it's actually was super easy to pick up. There's not a lot of min-maxing happening. It was basically like make sure you have steady focus, use your multi-shot to get the cleave with trick shots with rapid fire. Not a lot to keep track of, and that made it way easier to pick up. Also, I was surprised of their survivability. I mean, a lot of people always said Hunter is like super squishy, but I think in the War Within, they got a lot of buffs for their survivability. You have 2 charges of Survival of the Fittest, which is a 30% DR. You have Exhilaration, which is a 30% heal. Turtle, obviously. If you're not running a pet, you have Fortitude of the Bear, which it increases your health by 20% and then heals you for that same amount. So kind of like Exil, it's not a defensive per se, but it does help you stay alive. Also, Feign Death has been really useful this season. There's a couple instances where you can clear poisons and diseases, helping your healer out. And also with the Affix Devour, you can clear every single Devour yourself. You don't need to rely on, you know, another person in the group dispelling you, which is super helpful. You can instantly get that buff. That's as long as you're taking the emergency stab talent, which I think most builds do. Another thing is disengage. At first I was like, this isn't going to be useful at all, but there's definitely a few situations where it comes in super handy, especially on City of Threads, the last boss. You can get out of the roots. And even if you're running raid on Queen Ansarek, you can break the roots. Very helpful. And it's a short cooldown, so you pretty much have it up for everything that you need. As far as damage goes, I wouldn't put it bottom of the barrel. It actually felt pretty good. Kind of average. I mean, it did have trouble keeping up with some specs, like, you know, a good Shaman, a good Frost DK, even good Ret Paladins. You know, they're always blasting. And the Hunter is actually, I didn't know this while I was recording, it's actually target capped. Wildhead is telling me it's target capped at 8, and then Icy Veins is just saying it's hard capped. I think that's based off multi-shot and explosive shot just kind of falling off after a certain amount of targets. But as long as you have salvo and volley up going into a pool, you get your multi-shots out and then into a rapid fire, you end up doing pretty good damage, and there's not, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of buffs to keep track of. Just keep your aim shot into a multi-shot into a rapid fire. As far as utility goes, they do have some useful utility. There's a few traps that can knock up or knock back, slow mobs. You also have Trank Shot, which can soothe mobs that are enraged, which can be useful in things like Grim Batol with the big mob that enrages the guy after the second boss. Also, another thing, even though it's a pain, another thing is you do have Lust as a Marksmanship hunter. 99% of the time you're running without a pet for the lone wolf buff. But if I was pulled into a key for Lust purposes, which happened actually more than I expected, I would just ask at the beginning of the key, hey, when do you want Lust? I would have my pet out for when that time came. Sent Lust, and then after the fight, I could just dismiss it and go back to running lone wolf. So that's basically the list of pros, I would say. It's easy to play. The defensives are pretty good. Your survivability is pretty good. It has some utility. It can bring Lust. Has very good burst AoE with volley and salvo. On to the cons. I would say a con would be also it can Lust, because it's kind of a pain. This is changing in Season 2 of the War Within. It's kind of a pain to not have your pet out and then only bring it out for Lust, and then you have to dismiss it. So that's super annoying, but that's going away, so we don't have to worry about that. As far as cooldowns go, it has True Shot. I would say volley and salvo are cooldowns. They're 45 seconds. It's good for that burst AoE, but True Shot, 2-minute cooldown with built-in CDR. It doesn't feel cool to press. Like, you just get crit, and you can probably get it with cooldown reduction maybe every 1 to 1.5 minutes. It's a 2-minute cooldown baseline. But yeah, pressing it just kind of feels lame. You're just spamming aim shots into rapid fires. I don't know, nothing really happens on the screen. It's kind of just a button that you press. Also, going back to the easy to play aspect, I think for some people that can make it boring. So there's not a lot of min-maxy stuff like something like Arcane Mage, or even for any mage really, I would say, or like Enhancement Shaman. There's not a lot of min-maxing, not a lot of tracking happening. And if you're playing a spec like this the whole season, I could see it getting boring because of how easy it is to play. I would put that in the cons list. But overall, I think it's pretty good. I don't think it should have been in FTR. I feel like a lot of the DPS are pretty close this season. As far as next season, I'm not sure what I'm going to play for the F tier challenge. I mean, based on the last blue post, it looks like Aug is going to be in the dumpster. I don't want to play Aug Evoker, but we'll see what ends up being the worst. And I do want to start this series a little earlier in the season. Like, this last video is coming out, let's see, it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Basically 2 days before Season 1 ends. And then the patch comes out on Tuesday. So I'd like to start this a little earlier in the season when people are actually interested in the game. What else? I've been yapping for I don't know how long. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. Season 2 looks better besides healing. Looks like there's a lot of healing checks, so I think I'm just going to keep doing DPS as 0 to hero, maybe a tank. I really don't want to heal a 0 to hero, that would be a huge pain. I do like tanking, so maybe I'll pick up a tank. Brewmaster is probably, or even Prot Warrior is not looking great. We'll see what happens, but it might just be another F tier DPS. So yeah, we reached 2,500, actually more than 2,500 with the Necrotic Wake +9, we smoked it. Our item level finishes off here at 629. I have 2 mythic track pieces, some crafted stuff. So this guy's actually ready to go into Season 2. I wanted to play. BM is looking pretty good. There's a chance this guy just might be another alt. Thanks for watching. Check me out on Twitch. I'll be streaming there a lot for Season 2. We'll get another series going for Season 2, and I'll see you then.